declaration has been adopted, and that is a very important point of departure. This is going to allow us to continue the work of the European Council in the weeks and months to come, so as to continue identifying the strategic agenda for the EU. And I'd like to thank the Spanish presidency for the very active participation in the work, and thank you very much for the resilient 2030 report. That was a very substantial input to the political work that we are to be done. Over the last few years, we have all seen different crises that have hit the world, hit Europe. The climate change, COVID-19, and also the war of aggression by Russia.
Common priorities, what are also the differences among the member states, so that we can identify what we need to do in the weeks to come, in the months to come, to decide on common orientations, on common principles. 4 points are extremely important. The first one, we need to strengthen our economic basis, our technological basis. It is absolutely clear that green tech, artificial intelligence, quantum computer, these are challenges for all of us, and it's extremely important to identify what are our ambitious strategies on those questions. Second topic, security and defense. There is no doubt that the war by Russia against Ukraine has demonstrated the importance to invest more in capabilities, to develop our industrial basis, also including with the important role that must be played by the SMEs. Third point, energy. We have been working a lot for more sovereignty, for more independence, and we need to continue to maintain summits with countries, and you know that 2 years ago, more than 2 years ago, we had an important summit with the African Union, we had also summits with ASEAN, with Latin America, and we intend to be very active to engage with the rest of the world, because we think that what's at stake, this is a multipolar world. We believe in a multipolar world, and we believe that for a multipolar world, the EU has a special responsibility, a special role to play, and that's why we are very active in addressing the challenges together with the so-called Global South, together with the Prime Minister of Spain a few weeks ago in New York. We took some initiatives to try to mobilize the international community, including the Global South, to address the questions of fairness at international level, more inclusivity, which are important common challenges. Finally, one last word about migration, because we had also the occasion today to discuss migration, not the first time, not the last time. You know that since January this year, each European Council meeting, we had the occasion to discuss the topic and to have a state of play, especially on the external dimension of migration. Point one, we are pleased, and I am pleased that thanks to the huge efforts, including by you and by your team, Pedro, the huge efforts made by the Commission, the Council made an important steps with the Migration Pact a few hours ago. This is a good signal, this is very positive, but we know that it's also important to work very actively on the external dimension of migration, what we are doing. And that's why I believe it's very important to make sure that we are more efficient in our fight against the criminal groups, against the criminal groups, against the smugglers. We need more cooperation in the field of policing, in the field of justice on that question. But two, we need to engage with the third countries, what we are doing with some third countries, including with Tunisia. We need to cooperate more with those countries of origins, those countries of transit, in order to protect our borders, in order also to identify some legal channels of communication. And on the other hand, we need to improve the returns for those who are not allowed to stay on the European soil. And I would like to confirm that the next European Council meeting will have again the occasion to address this topic of migration. Finalement, un dernier élément, encore une fois.
Finally, a final point. I'd like to thank each and every one of you. These were 48 hours of intense politics, important for the European Union. I think this meeting has now helped very informal contacts being established, and we hope that this will lead to resolution of regional conflicts, Serbia, Kosovo, and we can understand better what we need to do in the months to come, and the same goes for the South Caucasus as well. So this political platform has shown that it is important for us to engage. The EU should engage with other leaders in countries that are also European. And I think this meeting gives us the starting point for our discussion on the strategic agenda, which is going to continue under the Belgian presidency and which will set the guidelines. So thank you very much once again, dear Pedro, for your involvement and your contribution.
Now, the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, has the floor.
First of all, I want to thank Prime Minister Sanchez, dear Pedro, for the outstanding host you and your country are for us, to bring us to this amazing place. What an experience. Yesterday you hosted the EPC and today the informal European Council. Many, many thanks for the very warm welcome. Today's informal summit was about preparing for the future. We met, as you know, 18 months ago in Versailles, right after the beginning of Russia's invasion in Ukraine. And today it was taking stock on what we committed back then, a more secure, a more competitive Europe, with stronger defense capabilities, energy independence, and a robust economy. This was the basis for the Versailles Declaration 18 months ago, and we delivered. We agreed in record time to procure and deliver massive financial and military support to Ukraine. Team Europe has already provided 82 billion euros worth of support for Ukraine. We have drastically reduced Russia's grip on our energy supply. We got rid of the dependency of Russian fossil fuels. Just a few figures that show this. We have completely gotten rid of Russian coal. We have reduced the part of Russian oil in the oil supply from 27% down to 6%. And we even had a dependency of 50% of Russian gas in the overall gas supply. This has been now reduced to less than 10% pipeline gas. So this shows that it was a tough ride. It brought us an energy crisis, but we mastered it, we managed it. Today, energy prices are down to pre-war levels. And most importantly, we leaped forward with a massive investment in renewable energy so that we can proudly say that last year, for the very first time, we were able to produce more electricity from sun and wind renewables than from gas. We also took a deep and good look at our economic dependencies. You know the topics, critical raw materials, or for example, semiconductors. Here too, we delivered, we took action. to reduce those risks. Think, for example, of the CHIPS Act that triggered already massive investment in production of semiconductors in the European Union, or think about the Critical Raw Materials Act or the Net Zero Industry Act. This is our proposal to ensure that the future of clean tech is in Europe. So we've come quite a long way in only 18 months, but we must keep our eye on the ball. And here is very helpful, Pedro, many thanks for the excellent analysis that was feeding into our discussion. These analysis points in the same overall direction of what needs to be done. It goes from protecting and promoting the increasingly fragile rules-based international order to boost research, investment, and training in Europe in key sectors, and strengthening social cohesion in the context of a profound and rapid change. To these core elements I was just describing, we need to add two more. The first is the crucial issue of managing migration, and the second is the enlargement process to an European Union of 30+ members. The accession process to the European Union is a merits-based one. This was very clear also today in our discussion. No shortcuts, no automated accession to the European Union. It's merits-based. But when we say merits-based, we also have to do not only work for the merits-based process in the candidate countries, but we also have to do our own homework so that we are ready in case that candidate countries are ready to join, that we are also ready to welcome them to the European Union. We will have the Commission's report, the annual report on the accession and where the state of play is for the different candidate countries by beginning of November. This will allow us then to take stock and have an informed debate during the December European Council. On our side, on tasks, we also discussed is, first of all, we need an agreement on the reform of the electricity market. This is very important. Let's keep in mind this is about Europe's leadership role in the fight in fighting climate change, and it's about overall EU competitiveness compared to our main competitors. And I'm not speaking about competition within the European Union, but competitors from outside. And second, we need an agreement on the reform of the economic governance framework. This is essential to allow public investment to play a strong and sustainable role in financing the green and the digital transition. My last point is on migration. First of all, good news. Good news that 2 days ago we found an agreement in Council. Congratulations to the Spanish presidency on the crisis management proposal. This is very important because it is a crucial piece of the puzzle for the overall Migration and Asylum Pact, so that now we hope that soon we will bring it over the finish line. But we have discussed today mainly the operational part of managing migration. Here, you know, there is the 10-point plan, short-time crisis reaction to the events in Lampedusa, but also the more structural, mid- and long-term approach like the agreement, the MOU with Tunisia. Let me briefly mention 5 elements that have been discussed. The first is indeed an overall understanding that we need a comprehensive approach to partner countries that are either countries of origin or transit countries. Here is very important that we invest in those countries. Global Gateway can play a crucial role with that investment. As you might recall, 150 billion euros of Global Gateway are reserved for African countries for investment in infrastructure. The second is there was an overall understanding also how important legal pathways and humanitarian corridors are. The better we are on the legal pathways and the humanitarian corridors, the more we can be strict on irregular migration. Just to give you 2 figures, we had last year 3.7 million regular migrants to the European Union. They are important. We need them. We need even more. But there were also registered 330,000 irregular migrants. And this is the point where we cannot accept that smugglers and traffickers define who and decide who is coming to the European Union. It is us who decide who is coming to the European Union, who gets asylum here, but also who has access to the labor market, and therefore very clearly these legal pathways. The third point is cracking down on smugglers. This is organized crime. And we have to fight the smuggling like organized crime with Europol and Eurojust and Frontex and all the knowledge of our member states. The fourth point is support the countries of transit who themselves have to work hard with the migration into their countries. And here to work very closely together with IOM and UNHCR to help those countries to bring migrants back to their countries of origin, so to give relief also to the countries of transit. And the fifth point is indeed return. We've seen in Lampedusa that the countries of origin, for example, are Ivory Coast, Senegal, or Guinea. Vice President Skinas went immediately to those countries to agree that there's a swift return of the irregular migrants, as I said, in return to establish talent partnerships and legal pathways. This is very important to return irregular migrants, to break the narrative of the smugglers, and to send out a strong message. It is the legal pathways that will bring you to Europe. Choose them. This whole approach is an approach based on Team Europe. Very clear is also that none of us is able to do it on our own. So it was a fruitful discussion among the Team Europe. Thank you.
Thank you, President von der Leyen. Now I'll give the floor to the Prime Minister of Spain, Sanchez, and the host of this event.
Muchas gracias y
Thank you so much, and thank you, Ursula, President of the Commission. Thank you, Charles, President of the European Council. I'd like to begin with thanks. Thanks to the Spanish government team. They've been working for a year to make this informal summit happen and be a success. And I think you've heard from the President of the Council and the Commission that it has been a success. Logistically speaking, of course, but it does demonstrate that when we really have to welcome a major event such as this in Spain, we Spanish can do it. So congratulations to the whole team. Also, congratulations to all delegations, all the personnel, the staff of the Council and the Commission, the delegations of the 27 member states, because thanks to them, it's been a success. And finally, thank you to the municipality of Granada, the regional government of Andalusia, who have made it possible to, and the law enforcement as well, who've made it possible for us to move with relative ease, and it's been quite a challenge over the last 2 days. But it's been worth it, because I think that this city of Granada will now be linked forever to important declarations. You've heard from the President of the Council and the President of the Commission. We have now initiated the discussion on the next strategic agenda. So what will Europe like in future? How many countries will be members? How will the Union function? How will it take decisions? How will it make sure it remains effective in the face of the challenges and the needs of our citizens? And how are we going to make our economies more resilient and more competitive at the end of the day? How are we going to guarantee prosperity for all European citizens? So it's been worth it. Granada will now forever be linked with a demonstration of political will shown by the member states to take forward the European project. Now, secondly, it's the role of the country holding the presidency to help the President of the Council and the President of the Commission to do their job. So over a 6-month period, And of course, at this point in time, just a year away from European elections. So we've heard just now about economic governance, about reforms of the electricity market, the Migration and Asylum Pact. Those are the challenges, and we are committed to tackling those. We've demonstrated that over the last period. We have achieved an agreement on the crisis management proposal, which is a key component of the Migration and Asylum Pact. This is very important because we now are moving into the trilogue with the Parliament with a view to a final agreement, which will define for all member states what responsibilities we have and what solidarity we want to demonstrate. Migration, of course, being a major challenge for the EU as a whole. As to the strategic agenda, you've just heard from President Michel and President von der Leyen that what we have done is contribute an important report or study, which was commissioned a year ago and has seen contributions, of course, from the EU institutions and the member states. But what we've tried to do is find a landing zone in terms of what we can agree is the strategic agenda in various policies, whether it's digitalization, energy sovereignty, the primary sector, agriculture, etc. So what does open strategic autonomy mean? Where are our strengths? Where are our weaknesses? How are we vulnerable? And how can we become more resilient and competitive as a continent? As to enlargement, now, I'd like to say I'm very grateful for all the work being done by various think tanks, and I'm grateful for the debate we held today. We have to respond as a union on 3 fronts. So once we take a political decision to go ahead with the enormous challenge that is enlargement, so we have to then adapt EU policies, and I'm thinking here of the cohesion funds, the CAP, the Common Agricultural Policy, anything to do with the freedom of movement of citizens. What would that look like in a union of 30 members? Then there is the question of institutional reform. And finally, what sort of enlargement do we want? Gradual or full, all or nothing? So the government of Spain has tried to do its best, make its contribution. I hope Presidents Michel and von der Leyen that we've managed to do that. And let me come full circle and say I want to thank from the bottom of my heart the people of Granada. The collaboration with the regional government of Andalusia and the municipality of Granada has been excellent, and our thanks are due to all the technical teams, the sound technicians, all of the people working here in this building have enabled us to work effectively, have made it possible for this summit to be such a success. Thank you all once again. So we're here now to answer your questions.
We will open the floor now to questions. So we'll take 4 questions, 1 per journalist, and we will start with Beatriz.
Maybe first a question for both presidents of the Council and the Commission, and then one for the Prime Minister of Spain. So, in spite of all the congratulations and comments about the good news about the agreement on the Migration Pact, this summit has been dominated by a very wild rhetoric about migration by some EU leaders. What does it say about the ownership of the measures that are being discussed and agreed? Are you confident that the situation from 2015 will not repeat itself and Europe will still find themselves in a few years with the same lack of putting into force of all these measures? And actually, we are going into an enlargement and migration are closely linked because of the free movement of people. So how do you intend to go forward on that way? Y una pregunta para el presidente Sánchez.
Another question for President Sanchez.
Primero una europea.
This was a European first, because, like other European countries, Spain is committed to enlargement towards the east, but have you started talking about figures, the economic repercussions that this is going to have for member states from the point of view of agricultural subsidies? How is Spain going to contribute to this enlargement process if you don't know what the enlargement? And also, I'd like to know what kind of assessment do you have about what will have on the formation of a government front here in Spain?
Il y a deux éléments concernant.
There are two elements that I need to look at on migration. There's nothing new here. All the debates over the last years have been ideological, difficult, often emotional, but there have always been two aspects. There's this solidarity between European countries. We need to make progress, and I think a substantial step forward has been taken under Spanish presidency, and the Migration Pact agreement has also helped. And sometimes it was very difficult to move forward because we had contrasting positions, and we need to work now to implement this pact in a fair way. This is shared responsibilities. That's the first element. The second element, I think we need to be pragmatic on the external dimension. We see a broad consensus in the European Council that we need to act on the external dimension as a priority. Let me give you some examples. Firstly, we need to better protect the Union's external borders, provide our support to countries that will help us protect our borders. We need to be more active, more operational, to demonstrate to the criminals that they abuse the distress and the vulnerability of people who imperil their lives. We need to show them that they will not win. So we need more cooperation, intergovernmental cooperation, and we need also greater involvement of justice and law enforcement to combat these criminals, to make it clear that they cannot continue this way. And thirdly, we need to engage with the countries of origin and transit. We need a global, a holistic approach. I know it's not simple. We need a lot of debate, negotiation. We've talked a lot about the new memorandum of understanding with Tunisia, and this is a commitment that we need to enter into. Let me just give you two examples that will show to what extent we need to have a very sensitive approach to all of this. Our countries of transit. And we also need to talk about liberalized visas. And let's not forget that there are some countries of have liberalized visa policies with other countries. Tunisia has, for example, with Western African countries. So some people from Western African countries can arrive easily to Tunisia and then move on. So we need to discuss all of this with these people. It's a matter of mobility. Also, we need to open legal channels of migration. We need to be the ones who decide who will have legal access to European territory. And another point is that we need to make sure that our return policy becomes more effective. We see all too often that return and readmission do not work properly. So these are the sort of issues that we're going to continue working on. We're going to continue being committed to, and that's an approach that we're going to continue. And then briefly on enlargement, well, yes, we are absolutely determined to put this point high up on our agenda. It's not going to be simple. We're going to have to reform our institutions. We also need reform of the countries that want to exceed. So we all see eye to eye. This is a process that has to be merit-based. We need to be frank. But we also need to see exactly what the repercussions are going to be on the EU from the point of view of priorities, financing, etc. So we're going to have fairly tough debates ahead of us. And we will see in the months to come that we are going to be having these debates, but we need to set our sights for the years to come.
I am confident that we will find good solutions what migration is concerned. With migration, it's important that we manage it, Migration was always there, will always be there. The question is how we are managing it as Team Europe. And there are two dimensions. The one is the internal dimension. This is covered by the Pact of Migration and Asylum. And we could speak a lot about it, but it is on its way now in the negotiations between Parliament and Council. And there's a very good chance that it will make it over the finish line. This is very important to manage migration on the borders of the European Union and within the European Union. But as important as this internal dimension is the external dimension, the external action. There was a broad support today in the European Council for this external dimension. And I have described in my introductory remarks the different steps concerning that. The principle is that you address the root causes for migration and that you work along the whole migratory route the people take. And the basic message is, yes, we need regular migration, we want regular migration, and we do not want people to risk their lives and lose a fortune or what they ever have as financial means to the smugglers and traffickers, but that they choose the safe pathways. And here, the work as Team Europe is extremely important because this includes comprehensive partnerships with the countries of origin and the countries of transit. And we have much more leverage and much better results for these comprehensive approaches if we work as Team Europe. What enlargement is concerned, there will be on one hand a report on the progress of the different countries. This is crucial because there we can then, with facts and figures, take stock how the progress was and where they stand. But of course, in parallel, the discussion about what does it mean for us, how do we have to change and adapt and prepare for the future as a European Union will go on. Many thanks, Prime Minister, what you said about the work that is being done in think tanks, but also during your presidency. This will certainly continue during the Belgian presidency too. And the Commission is working on different policy areas to give food for thought into this process on how we can improve the situation within the Lisbon Treaty.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you for your questions. Just briefly, in response to the first and second, yesterday we met in the European political community, and I met up with Zelensky privately, and he asked me, he said, in Spain, well, is there or isn't there support for Ukraine and defending Ukraine, in other words, against Russian aggression? I said there was a broad majority to support Ukraine. Now, if anyone studies the political debate in our country, I think it's clear that broadly speaking, we are in favor and we support Ukraine. We think this is a just cause. They're defending their nation, their territorial integrity and their freedom. So if that's the support of Spanish society for Ukraine, because in the face of this unjustified aggression, it's also clear that Spanish society and the Spanish government are in favor of also beginning these negotiations with Ukraine on its possible accession. Spain joined what was then the European Economic Community in the 80s of the previous century. So why on earth would we object to other countries who have been waiting at the door for so long being integrated into the Union? Of course, we would like to see extension of the Union into areas which in geopolitical terms are also very important. I'm thinking here of the Western Balkans, of course. So we are societies and governments that are open to enlargement, but of course from there to making it happen, we have to answer difficult, complex questions. We have to demonstrate political will. As you've said, what will happen with the various funds? There will, of course, be issues of foreign policy, of fiscal policy to be dealt with. But we've begun the process. We've launched the debate. It's very important, politically speaking. We have formally launched the debate. It's part of what we call the strategic agenda. And we are now committed to a process in which in the next presidency, under Belgian presidency, the agenda will be fixed and we will continue working toward the future. And we'll see how. We'll see what the details are and what reforms and adaptations are necessary. But in Spain, we have always been constructive in our approach to proposals. We've always contributed, and talking about Sumar, the political party, yes, we note their proposal. We also note the proposals of other political parties on the amnesty, which is one way of overcoming the judicial impact of various decisions and as a consequence of what happened in 2017. So there are proposals, but of course they are not proposals of the Socialist Party. I've also said that having received the request of the King to attempt to form a government, I will engage in that process, establish what the positions are on all sides, and all parties should try to work towards making a government possible as soon as possible. Now, I know there are questions you want to ask, or what would the contents of such an agreement be to form a government? Well, I can't tell you until we've got the agreement, because we're in the midst of the negotiations. But what I can say to the Spanish people is that it will be an agreement when it comes, in full transparency. It will be made fully public. Secondly, the objective is clear and simple. We want to continue doing what we've been doing for 5 years, progressive policies and policies of working together within the confines of the Spanish Constitution. So you will be the first to know when the negotiations are concluded. And of course, there will be no agreement until everything is agreed. Nothing is agreed until everything is agreed. That's all. I mean, it makes sense and applies in all areas of life and politics too.
Just stick to one question per journalist. José Miguel.
Buenas tardes.
Good afternoon. I'd like to ask you about migration. Was Prime Minister Orbán very tough on the Migration and Asylum Pact, because he said that this violates his country, ditto for Poland? Was there any compromise? Do you think that there's any alignment possible, or do you just rule it out? And are you not afraid that this matter is going to monopolize the whole discussion around the European elections next year? And for the president of the government, a couple of questions. You haven't been able to come up with a joint declaration, and migration could not be included in the joint declaration of the summit. And then as regards your government, you said that you're going to be perhaps meeting with Mr. Puigdemont, but would it be possible that there might be a meeting with, sorry, you won't be meeting Mr. Puigdemont, but you might be meeting a member of his party?
Sí, bueno.
Yes, on the first question, can I say there is a joint declaration? What there isn't is a paragraph on migration. And this was an informal council. This is an informal council. What do I mean by this? The most important is that we have managed to endorse what our Home Affairs ministers managed to agree on a couple of weeks ago. And this is absolutely important, because now we can unblock the situation. This is what the European Parliament asked us to do. We can then finish off the trilogues that we began under the Czech and then Swedish presidencies, and we can now reach an agreement on this crisis regulation. So from this point of view, well, I mean, we knew that there was a risk there. The President of the Council and I myself, as well as the President of the Italian government, did ask us to put this point on the agenda today, the point of migration. But let's not forget, Grenada was convened to talk about the strategic agenda, to talk about enlargement, to talk about resilience and competitiveness of the European economy. Now, on your second question, look, we're in the negotiation process and nothing is agreed until everything is agreed. Let me insist. The Spaniards voted on the 23rd of July. They spoke, and this is what the result is. Up to us now to form a government for the next 4 years. So we need to talk about all of this. I mean, are we negotiating for me taking over? But I don't know. But I'm still negotiating with the parliamentary group so that somebody becomes prime minister and takes up on follows the will of the Spanish people. I mean, we need to continue with the same policies, make progress, social progress, and able to live together. I think we all know that the situation in Catalonia is much better than in 2017, and obviously we have to work within the framework of the Spanish Constitution. And we are going to reach an agreement. And as soon as we have, we will be transparent and public about this. I mean, if somebody wants to, if the opposition wants to have recourse to the Constitutional Court, then they're quite happy to do so. This is a democracy. The Spanish democracy is working to implement the mandate that they gave us last July.
Just briefly on migration, as the Spanish Prime Minister said, there is a Granada Declaration on the strategic agenda, and separately, the President of the European Council has issued a declaration with broad support on migration. You've had an opportunity to see that text. As I said, it's broadly supported and contains what was contributed by myself and the Commission on the External Dimension of Migration.
We'll go to the third question, Carl.
Carl de Meyer for the French daily Les Echos about enlargement. For you, President Michel, new figures have emerged this week about the amount of cohesion and agricultural funds that Ukraine and other candidate countries could benefit from after accession. Can you please give us some details about the methodology of your services, on which figures of GDP, population they are based? And for both of you, President von der Leyen and President Michel, what conclusions do you draw from these figures? What does it mean about these two policies, agriculture and cohesion? Does it mean that we have to reduce the share of these policies in the total budget, or that we must increase the EU budget way beyond the 1% of GDP that is already today in place?
Yes, I think the answer to your question is in the introduction I made earlier. This is a political and democratic debate which was launched today. It has to do with the priorities for tomorrow and with enlargement in view. But we also need to look at the financial framework. Now, I'm not going to comment on leaks to the press. There is technical and serious work underway and that will be pursued with the member states. The Commission will contribute so that we can look at what the treaties call the absorption capacity in their rather bureaucratic terms. And we will see, of course, how that can work. We've identified here in Grenada what the strategic framework is for this debate, for that discussion. We have identified what the key objectives are, which are largely shared. We want Europe to be less dependent, less vulnerable, more able to defend its values and defend its interests. Those are the key points. We've identified sectors where we have to work harder. And we've identified the fact that for the financial means for all this is a crucial matter. Now, when we debated the RRF, we spent 4 days and 4 nights negotiating, as you will recall, and I'm convinced that we'll have to come back to all of that. It will be a complex negotiation, but it's absolutely necessary because we need a budget that is aligned with the priorities and the ambitions. It's about being consistent with putting our money where our mouth is, effectively.
As far as I understand, this is a council paper, and I cannot comment on that one. Indeed, we have been asked today during the European Council to contribute to the estimates that can be done. Important is here, I think, that we keep in mind that we cannot just extrapolate policies of today over the next decade. This is impossible because we all know also the policies a decade ago changed over time. I like the surrounding environment is changing. So we have to work on different scenarios, and we will work on figures that might be playing into a full picture about the development. But let me, in principle, say, we have a lot of experience with accession and enlargement. And the experience has shown in every case that it was not only beneficial to the country that joined the European Union, but that the accession was also beneficial to the European Union to a wide extent. And this is true because mainly the strongest element we have in our union, besides the rule of law on which our union is founded, is our single market, the biggest single market in the world. And indeed, an enlargement also means if the countries are ready and the preconditions are good to join, it always means that it is an improvement for our companies with access to more consumers, and it's improvement for our people with access to better and more goods. So the experience has shown that not only was the living standard of the accessing countries rising, but the whole of the European Union has benefited a lot. Again, I say, the accessing countries have to be ready, and we have to be ready. This is a precondition for success.
Thank you very much. And the fourth question will take Andrew from Reuters.
Thank you, Andrew Gray from Reuters. President Michel, the Grenada Declaration does not include the date of 2030, which you've proposed as a target date for the EU being ready for enlargement. Does that mean that date is now off the table, or can you give us a sense of how the leaders have reflected on that proposal so far? And the same or similar question to President von der Leyen and Prime Minister Sanchez. Do you believe 2030 is a helpful and realistic potential target date? Thank you.
Cette date n'est pas dans la déclaration.
Well, this date isn't in the declaration, but it never was. So I suggested that we put in the data before. First and foremost, we need to look at real progress made by the countries. Now, if they are ambitious and if they want to be ready, then they can be by 2030. Certainly, it's useful, but some heads of government and state did actually express reservations about having a date. Others liked a date. But what's important is to see what our responsibility is, we, the 27, to put our house in order to prepare ourselves for accession, as well as see what they need to do so that they are ready. But we have to stop procrastinating. That's important, especially in the current situation of the war in Ukraine. We need to turn to those who want to join us to say, we are serious. So I think we have to put an end to their feeling of being ignored and forgotten over nearly 20 years in the Balkans. So that's the idea. I think this discussion that we've had, I think, shows how the European debate is lively. I think if it's a project, if progress is made, then setting a date actually is an encouragement. It encourages them to work, to reform, and to be ready. And I think it's of geopolitical importance for Europe. So the idea isn't to be bigger and more populous in Europe, but more robust, more prosperous, safer, more stable for the future. So enlargement, I think, means that we will build a Europe that is more stable and secure for the future.
So I think I have said several times already how the process is. The process is merits-based. It is no automatism and not one size fits all, but it is individual. There are clear rules, there are milestones that have to be achieved, there are the Copenhagen criteria, which describe what the goal is. In the past, we have, of course, also seen that countries that wanted to join the European Union, some were faster, depending on the political will to reform, and some took more time, and some so far never made it. Therefore, it is a merits-based process.
Después de lo que ha dicho la presidenta.
Yes. What the Commission President has said is that, of course, at the end of the day, it's a process of negotiation with those other applicant countries, and I have nothing to add. But in 2030, of course, together with Morocco, Spain will be hosting the World Cup. So another reason to celebrate in 2030.
Brussels.